Perfect. Thank you so much. So welcome. My name is Katie Andrews. I'm here today for our presentation, Healing Mother Earth. It was a very interesting presentation for me to put together for you guys. I really wanted to draw on not only the benefits that we get from our planet and nature and the touch points that we have, especially when it's, the nice time of year to be outside, but also how the way we treat our planet has impacts on us from both, civilization perspective and a systemic perspective across, from our communities across kind of our entire planet. So a lot of interesting information. I just did some updates on these slides this week, so was able to get some new statistics in, which I think are interesting for me, as a wellness professional to learn about as well. So I hope you'll enjoy the content. As I said just a moment ago, the chat is open. So if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to put in, please feel free. I will check the chat throughout the presentation, but I will check it at the end as well. So if I miss your question in real time, I will come back to it. So don't worry about that. And then of course, this is being recorded, so it will be available for later viewing as well. So I'm going to kick it off. Just a little bit about me if we haven't met before. Again, my name is Katie Andrews. I'm a registered dietitian and corporate wellness specialist. My background is primarily in nutrition, but I also do a lot of counseling on sleep and stress science, working in this space for over a decade. So, this is a topic that is not something that comes directly, I would say, out of my initial background, but I find working in private practice with clients one-on-one, I do spend a lot of time helping them to understand how beneficial nature can be, whether it's just the time you spend outside or the time that you disconnect from everything that's inside. So I really found a lot of the advice that I wanted to include today is advice that I use on a daily basis, both in my professional and in my personal life as well. That time of year where, you're saying to your kids, off your screens and everybody outdoors, because they really do gain so many fantastic benefits from that. So let's jump into our content for today. I kind of separated this into two sections that I think helps us gain a lot of understanding on how the earth helps us heal, but then how we can also help heal our earth. So just touching on some really, I think, fantastic and easily manageable concepts for today, since we only have 30 minutes. We'll end with a little bit of information, some tips on controlling consumerism, because I thought that was something really valuable for us to consider when it comes to how we relate to our planet and our environments. And as always, I'll leave a couple minutes for questions at the very end as well. So how does our earth help us heal? Whether you're someone that feels very connected to nature, where you're someone that, likes to start your day with time outside, or maybe that's something you're struggling with. You're not quite sure, okay, well, once I get outside, what am I meant to be doing? What type of connections am I meant to be having? No matter where you fall on that scale, there are significant healing benefits that come from the environment that's around us. And I separated this into a couple different sections because I think that they are each really individualized, and have very different benefits. So first, starting with the Earth's oceans, I'm very lucky. I'm someone who lives in a coastal town, so I have access to the beach and the ocean on a daily basis if I want to do that. And I find, connection with the ocean is something I recommend when you're trying to find some groundedness, when you're trying to maybe relax, when you're trying to find a moment of quiet Zen or meditation. But actually, there are incredible physical healing benefits that we get from salt water as well. Salt water is extremely nutrient rich in several minerals, such as magnesium, zinc, iron, potassium. Has a lot of healing benefits. So if you've ever had a cut on your foot or a scratch or mosquito bites. My middle son came home from a nature camp this week with about 8 to 10 massive mosquito bites in the back of his neck. And my first thought was like, oh, he needs to go swim in the oceans. That actually helps relieve some of the burning and the sensation and the itching that you get from that. So these minerals are really key for reducing inflammation and for protecting our skin. If you've ever done an Epsom salt bath, this is a big bag of salt you can buy. This is something that's recommended often for athletic recovery, during pregnancy, for relaxation. But it's basically the same concept as going in the salty ocean. These minerals can actually go through our skin's protective layer and help with healing our skin, and also, renewing the mineral deposits that are in our skin. If you've ever traveled anywhere like the Dead Sea, oceans that have high salinity content are often touted as wellness and recovery centers for the human body and mind. So salt water not only can help healing with scrapes and sores, but it can enhance the flow of lymph fluid that moves through your body as well, which plays a significant role when it comes to immunity. So several reasons why ocean water is so beneficial. We'll talk in a little while about why ocean water is also challenged at this moment in time. But so many key benefits when it comes to the salinity and the mineral content that we get from our oceans. Spending time in nature outside of the ocean, let's say you're somewhere that's inland, you have hiking trails, you can walk in your neighborhood, you can go to parks or spend time in playgrounds, maybe if you have young children. So many beneficial aspects for the mental health conditions that many people suffer from. So whether it's depression, stress, loneliness, self-esteem, mood, there's been a lot of research, which we'll get into in a moment, on different ways in which you can spend time in nature that can help benefit with these mental health conditions. There was actually a lot of research that was done just specifically during COVID for how people help to manage their time either spent indoors or spent in quarantines. And it was amazing the mental health benefits that we saw when people were able to take a walk every day outside, or meet up with a friend to walk their dogs, when we got to the point where those things were safe. And I think it really reminded many of us that, wow, having that connection to being outdoors, whether it's the vitamin D we get from the sun, the fresh air we're breathing, connecting to the ground, seeing nature in process, really has a lot of benefits when it comes to our mental health. So, this was something I was, obviously quite aware of prior to COVID, but it was interesting to see these studies get done specifically on, people who were stuck in urban environments and really didn't have the opportunity to go out into nature. People that had that connection to the outdoors, really less levels of mental health suffering that happened during that time. So there is actually a word for this when it comes to taking care of ourselves and our mental health, which is called ecotherapy. Or ecotherapy, excuse me. If you're familiar with this term, then you would know it's a formal type of therapy which involves activities in nature, which sounds pretty generalized, right? So you need mental health help, you go out for a walk. It's a little bit more kind of complicated and deeper than that. This research actually dates back into the 1970s. Ecotherapy is led by some type of trained professional. So that could be a social worker, that could be a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And the idea is that you focus on doing an activity versus focusing on your health. So this isn't just taking some type of mental health or talk therapy and conducting it in the outdoors. It's actually choosing an activity. This woman here is hiking, but it could be kayaking, it could be, trail running, canoeing, it could be gardening, it doesn't have to be something incredibly, terribly active. But the idea is that this takes place in a green environment where you have the opportunity to connect with the earth through a process called grounding that we'll talk about in a second. And it's amazing if you're interested in this, if this might be something you see as a benefit, potentially for yourself or for a loved one. If you look at the research around ecotherapy, it's amazing how differently it can be approached. So for some people, this is really going deep into nature and it's group-led talk therapy. For other people, it's just, I know that when I'm getting into my head too much, I need to go outside and spend some time in nature and follow an activity that really works well for me. So you saw one of the commonalities across this is that this takes place in a green environment. Obviously, not everything in nature is green, but a lot of the things we experience in nature are. And this is kind of drawn back to this concept of healing attributes of the color green. So there's a lot of color psychology study that is done that it's been done as well. It's interesting to read up on. It's kind of like taking, almost like a Myers-Briggs, personality style test to see what colors you personally find resonate with you and what those colors mean. So, some colors might be more active and fiery, like reds and oranges. Some colors are more calming, like blues. But the color green actually is associated with healing attributes. So the meaning of the color is, nature, growth, tranquility. There was a 2020 study that found that, 39% of respondents in this study linked the color green with contentment. There were other colors that were linked with stress or strife or, unhappiness. And, this is almost just below half of these respondents found that they felt content when they interacted with the color green. The color also has a shorter wavelength. If you've looked at color wavelengths, if you kind of picture one of those hospital tapes, right, with the wavelengths that go up and down. So shorter wavelengths, a little bit closer together. And the theory is that this is considered relaxing, which can positively affect your thinking, but also your physical health and stress relief. So what are ways in which you can do this, right? If you're thinking, okay, I think I would benefit from some better connection with the planet, some form of ecotherapy. Maybe I don't want to work with a trained professional, but I do want to look into this a little bit more deeply. So these are just 3 simple examples. Some, are more kind of cohesive programs. Some are, things you could go start doing on your own as early as today. So wilderness therapy, this is programs that are a little bit more controlled. So you might be familiar with, a program called NOLS. These are programs where you go out into the wilderness, you're camping, you're hiking. This is oftentimes aimed at teenagers or young adults as a way to get them away from whatever it is in their home life that may be causing some stress or strife, reconnecting with the earth, and then learning these survival skills. Things become a lot less complicated in some ways, more complicated in other, when your biggest job for the day is how am I going to make a fire and cook a meal, versus I think the drama that we experience in our everyday lives from our screens, from social media, from our news feeds, all those things. Animal assisted therapy, so you probably are familiar with the term of therapy dogs, but there are many types of therapy animals, and similar to the research around the benefits that we can get from being in nature, there's significant benefits to whether it's equine programs with horses or spending times in a farm setting with trained therapy dogs. There are also therapy cats and therapy rabbits and lots of different examples of therapy animals. But I would say horses and dogs are the 2 most common, and spending time, with these animals can really bring a lot of relaxation and contentment and connection, especially if, you're struggling with connection with other people. Sometimes connection with animals, something that can give more benefit. And then green exercise. So this is something that I wouldn't necessarily qualify as ecotherapy, but this is partaking in physical activity well outside. This can be gardening, horseback riding, running, riding your bike. I know for me, I am not an athlete by any measure. I ski, that's pretty much it. When I was a fitness instructor, I did indoor cycling, and that is not outside. But in the past few years, I really, saw the benefits that my children get from playing sports outdoors. And so I picked up tennis, which I'm still terrible at, but I have to say, I look forward to the time every week. And I tried to play in the winter indoors, and it just wasn't the same thing. It's something about being outside and moving your body and feeling, the sweat when it's hot and the wind through your hair and seeing, whatever beautiful kind of nature is around you. And it really does have this additional kind of relaxation benefit. Plus you're getting some exercise in, which also has the same benefits, obviously, for mental and physical health as well. So outside of ecotherapy, there's another concept that I wanted to talk about today that's called grounding. And I find this is kind of what we do in nature that makes us feel better, but I wanted to help you put a word on it so that next time you're like, wow, I really need some connection to the outdoors, you can say, wow, I'm not feeling grounded. Because I think as much as grounding describes the process of this connection with nature, when I think about times in which you may need this, it's when you feel a little disconnected. It's when you feel maybe a little bit overwhelmed with what's going on at home, at work. You're not feeling that connection to the outdoors. Maybe you're spending a lot of time looking at the outdoors through a window, but not actually on that ground. And so when you feel a little bit untethered, I think of it as like when, I'm a kite on a string and the string just starts getting a little too high and the kite gets a little more erratic. That's when I think, okay, need to get a little bit down closer to earth. So this is also called earthing, but it's a therapeutic technique that revolves around this exchange of the energy between the surface of the earth and the human body. So whatever level of Mother Nature you believe in, I think we can all agree that there is an energy that comes from our planet that's pretty incredible. And finding a way to harness that energy into you as the individual is the basic concept of grounding. So this is the feeling, when you walk across fresh soft grass, or you feel sand beneath your toes, or the crunch of snow. This is really about your connection to the elements in your environment and to the planet itself. So how do we accomplish this? You may just walk out the front door of your house and go, yeah, I don't feel grounded. I'm on the ground, but I'm not feeling grounded. The walk to your mailbox may not be quite enough. It's absolutely okay. Some of this is about mental kind of, mindset as well. So a few ways you can make this connection. Going barefoot. I always thought it was crazy to see those long distance runners that were basically running in like what looked like little pads on the bottom of their feet. But what you find is our feet actually connect a lot better to the earth when we don't have our shoes in the way. So get your toes in the sand. Your optimal energy transfer is going to be when there's no barrier between the surface of the earth and your body. You could also do this by lying in the grass or on a quiet bench. If you're in a city and you're like, I really do not want to take my shoes off in Central Park, I completely understand as a city dweller for many years. So it may be that just finding a quiet bench or laying out a blanket or towel and laying in the grass works as well. If you don't have a big, outdoor space to go to, but you have a beach, connect with the water. Saltwater preferred to fresh. I think there's a lot of health concerns this year just about our global temperatures and how that affects things like lakes and ponds. So you want to, be aware of that before you're relaxing in your lake or pond, just from a safety perspective. But the salt water, if you're somewhere where you can get that connection, that is a great way to do your grounding, both from the beach into the water, kind of a dual benefit. And then getting your hands dirty is another way too. I know we're talking about grounding in terms of our feet and the earth, but connection with the earth can be through your hands as well. So gardening is a fantastic way. If you don't have the ability to have a garden at home, that's okay. You can do maybe just some potted plants in a windowsill. I was at a friend's house the other day and she has this new arrow garden where it was just a little kind of contraption, and she had planted herbs and had its own little grow light. And she was like, it's amazing how much relaxation it gives me to come down in the morning and make my coffee and just see a little bit of nature inside. So I know if you're in more urban environments, it can be challenging, but there's always a way to bring a little bit of that green in and find some connection through your grounding. So we've talked a lot about what the earth is doing for us, but I think another important consideration is our relationship back to the earth, because while we can reap so many benefits, those benefits are only going to continue if we take good care of her. And B, I think we also get some really strong physical and emotional benefits from actually taking care of the planet, right? So how can we do that? Well, first, what's going on our planet? I won't dwell on this too long because I know it's a depressing topic, but from overpopulation to the use of fossil fuels, global warming, deforestation, I feel like this always seems more extreme to me in the summer months. I was just reading headlines about forest fires in Hawaii. We had a lot of smoke where I am in New England from the Canadian forest fires this year, rolling blackouts. A lot of this is due to the way we treat our earth and natural consequences that generations will be dealing with, whether it's changes in air quality, lack of drinkable water, erosion of our coral reefs. All of this has significant impact on us and how the earth can take care of us, seeing kind of as what condition she's in. So what are some things we can start doing? I think sometimes I look at those images and I get immediately overwhelmed and think, oh God, there's what could I possibly do as a single individual or even as just a family to improve the way we take care of the earth so that she can take care of us in kind? Well, first, I think waste is a huge area of need for improvement. So this is municipal solid waste management just from the 1960s to 2018. So this doesn't even take us through the past 5 years. But basically about each individual human produces around 5 pounds of trash each day, which is around 1,600 pounds of trash per year. So that's 18 pounds per average family, which comes out to around 6,600 pounds per year. So of the, almost 300 million tons of waste in 2018, only 70 million of those were recycled. Now, there's a lot of controversy around recycling because I think we've all realized many things like plastics that we thought were recyclable are actually not. So something that we'll focus on a second is things that are compostable, because I think we get a lot more benefit from that. But every year we're producing more waste. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is why? We somewhat eat the same, foods, but we grow less of our own foods. Most people buy less of their food locally, whether that's at farmers markets or farm stands. And so food comes in more packaging. We certainly ship things a lot more. I know Amazon Prime Day was one of those examples of, I felt like everyone in my closest circle was like, well, what do I need? What do I need? I was like, well, do you need anything? I think sometimes we are pushed to consume because we can get a deal or it's a sale. And, we see that with things like Black Friday, but that's now kind of spread out into the other parts of our environment. And you think about having something like Amazon Prime Day in the dead of summer, when these trucks, there's already so much traffic, so many people using personal motor vehicles to get around. Then we add even more pressure on, delivery trucks. And it's, some of this waste is very easy to track back where it's coming from. And it's just the nature of how many of us live today. We buy our grocery orders online, we get more things delivered, we rely on food delivery, et cetera. But all of this means more waste. Right, because if the food's getting delivered, it's in a paper bag that's got a plastic bag around it. That's, so you can see where it's very different than just picking something up from a restaurant, let's say, or eating out. So how do we reduce our waste? This is a huge focus of my family. I think my kids could give this part of the presentation because I'm constantly thinking and working on how can we reduce our waste. So first thing is repurposing any materials versus throwing them away. So for me, any type of glass that I get a product in, whether it's a jam jar, jelly jar, a soup, I save almost all of those and find ways to reuse them. Maybe kids are doing an art project, they need somewhere to use their paintbrushes. I'll make granola and I'll restore it in that instead of a plastic bag. Anything that can be washed and reused is beneficial. Highly recommend, looking around, whether it's cardboard boxes, plastic bags, egg cartons, anything you can give a second life means that you're reducing your waste. Helping to pick up trash in your community depends on where you live and what the opportunities are, whether it's an Earth Day project or something a little bit more ongoing. But you could organize a park or beach cleanup day, get your children, your neighborhood involved. This can be really beneficial. I think it also helps people recognize how much waste there is, which is how it can help you say, oh, okay, there's so much waste to be collected. Maybe this is something we can reduce. And try to be conscious of only buying what you need. I think that we exist in a time where there's this almost fear of missing out feeling of not purchasing things. I think Prime Day was a great example of this. Because it's so easy on our phones and our computers to buy things with one click, we don't always think through the need as significantly as we should. A great example this week, my son's doing a 1-week sailing camp, and I'm guilty of this too. He needed a life jacket. But rather than going around to my tons of friends that have kids his age asking to borrow one for a week, I ordered one. Of course, he hated it because it was too tight. He ended up borrowing one anyway. And now I'm like, I didn't need to consume in that moment. I didn't need to deal with the shipping materials. And now I have a life jacket that no one wants to wear. So I think our need for immediate gratification has contributed to greater waste. And it's great to just always dial that back and think a little bit more about how we can control that. Another thing that we've done in my family that helps me feel a lot better about waste is composting. So if you're not familiar with composting, this is taking brown and green matter. Brown matter is things like twigs and leaves, and then your green matter is food scraps, lawn clippings, anything that comes out of the back of your juicer, right? Anything that's kind of an inedible part of an edible food. So whether it's an apple core or an eggshell, and you mix these two parts together. You can see in the canister there in the bottom right corner, that's a rotating canister. We have one of those in our yard. You mix the green and brown parts together, and this breaks down over time and can create soil fertilizer. It's a much longer process than how I just simplified it. But if you're interested in composting, it's something I highly recommend doing. We actually, like I said, we have this rotating canister in our yard, but we produce so much food waste because we're a big family. And so we actually use a neighborhood composting service. So I have a canister we fill up each week and they come and pick it up, and it costs me something like $30 a month. And then in the spring, I get beautiful black gold soil that I can use in our garden beds. So if you're feeling like, we want to reduce our waste, how else can I do this? Composting is a great place to start. And no matter where you're located, I'm sure there's a compost service if you don't want to take this on in your backyard yourself. So also a lot of benefits. Not only are you reducing your waste by putting food scraps in the compost, but once you get that turned into soil, the benefits of using these in your garden are systemic. So this is improved soil structure. It's a great balance for growing healthy plants and microbes. It's a natural fertilizer, so nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. These are all elements that you need in your soil. You would normally have to add in to a typical potting soil, but now you have them naturally occurring. And this also can reduce methane emissions from landfills, because this food is now not going into a landfill, but rather into a compost. So a couple other simple things, getting your hands dirty a little bit in the spring or fall season when it's time to plant trees, flowers, garden. This, I think growing things just helps us feel a better connection to Mother Nature. I know for me it does, and I'm not the green thumb in our family, but I love contributing where I can and trying not to kill things. But seeing my children make that connection with the outside world too, it also helps them understand the delicate nature, I think, of what we grow. How much work and effort you can put into growing a single carrot or a cucumber. It helps us really also appreciate and reduce the waste of that food as well. So other ways to lower your personal footprint: be mindful of your electricity use, especially in the summer when those blackouts or brownouts in certain areas are more common. So turning off lights when you change rooms, you don't have to leave your appliances plugged in if you're not using them. Not leaving, I know if you have a dog who loves some noise, try not to leave the TV on for them. Maybe you can run a fan or a sound machine, something that's not going to use up as much energy. Try to avoid that ride the bus syndrome. So I remember learning about this concept when I was much younger. This assumption we all make, well, everybody else is taking the bus, so I can take my personal car. If we all make that assumption, then we're all taking our personal cars and no one's riding the bus. So, trying to lower your personal car use in some areas, that's impossible. Public transportation, it says trains only account for about 2% of the transportation related carbon emissions versus over 70% from our personal vehicles. So even if that just means carpooling, right? Do 6 of you all have to drive your personal cars to meet for dinner? No, maybe you can go in 2 cars instead of 6. So lots of different ways that you can do this. And then final note, I said I was going to say something and I mentioned already, but this concept of considering your consumerism. I think a lot of our impact on our planet and on our waste comes from the way in which we consume these days. It's something I've been thinking about a lot as I've purged different parts of my house and thinking like, wow, we so much rampant consumerism that's really not needed. So I think always asking yourself, do I need a new item? Is this something I could find used or secondhand? Is it something like the life jacket I need for just a week that I certainly could borrow from something? Where's it being delivered from? Could I pick it up versus shipping it? Can you buy something locally? Reduce the footprint of something being shipped across the country. Trying to avoid plastic, non-reusable plastic items. So water bottles are the most offensive and the most obvious. So opt for reusable. Even when you're traveling, I bring an empty water bottle to the airport. There's so many stations at the airport now to fill it up, and then I have a water bottle for the rest of my trip. Buying in bulk, another great way to reduce waste. I try when it's the summer months and we're at the beach in different places, I do rely on kind of snack packs and things for my kids. When we get into the school year, we go back to reusable snack bags, reusable containers, much more kind of green. And then if your fresh produce goes bad and you're throwing it out, you can always opt to buy frozen, whether it's for fruits, veggies. They're just as healthy as their fresh counterparts if you're experiencing a lot of food waste. So just final thoughts, a lot that the earth can do for us when we're doing well for the earth, so many healing benefits from Mother Nature, but also important that, we take care of this planet so it can care for the next generation. So I'm going to finish my screen share. I'd love to open it up if you guys have any questions. You're welcome to put them into the chat box. So if you haven't seen the chat box here, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. Lots of reminders and smart ideas. Absolutely. These are reminders I benefit from too. I find I'm constantly chasing my kids around the house, reminding them about light. Just one of my son's bedrooms light was been on from this morning. So it's all things that we know, but I think the reminders are really beneficial, especially for me. I find in the summer months, when air conditioning is running constantly and more people are taking longer road trips, it is beneficial to think, oh, okay, where can I still make that small impact? So you're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Great. Well, if we don't have any questions, thank you guys. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your summer, and I will see you at the next session.